Just how much do you guys, or how much would you like to see Cody Bellinger back in your eyes?
Whew. I mean, obviously what Cody brought to us last year in so many ways, just who he was in the room, his performance between the lines on both sides of the ball, his athleticism, his versatility. Who wouldn't want a player like that? But he's earned the right now to get to this point of his career, a free agency, as still a relatively young man. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it shakes out. But as far as the player and the person, he's a good one.
Have you been an active part of the recruiting process?
No, not so much with, I usually don't recruit as much with, with guys that we've had or whatever, They know who we are, they know what we're about. Certainly if there comes a point where, and this isn't just for Cody, this is with anyone, when it gets to a point where we're starting to get down the road or be in conversations, I'll certainly have those conversations with guys, where I see it fit.
Have you done any of that yet?
No.
When Bellinger comes back, how do you get Dominguez the bats? I know you say things play their way out, there's injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, Stan being hurt opened up so fast. But if you guys are healthy, what do you do about Dominguez?
Well, we're back in the hypothetical game again. I mean, right now, reality is JD is a young, talented player that got real experience at the big league level last year, had a lot of success, had some struggles along the way with it, but I think we all see a really talented player there. He went down to play winter ball to get some more at bats, which I think is going to be very valuable for him. And if a situation presents itself down the road where you end up having a lot of good players for not enough spots, you figure it out, you work it out, and then competition plays a big role too, where those things kind of work themselves out. There were times in the season early on, in the first half especially, where a rotation kind of served us well, and all those guys really probably thrived, and in some cases it probably helped keep some guys a little bit fresher down the stretch because of that, because they kind of protected each other. There was buy-in. They were all playing regularly, and they were all contributing at a really high level. So, we'll cross that bridge when we get there if and when something like that comes up.
What reports have you gotten on Jason and winter ball? And also,
Say it again?
What reports have you gotten on Jason and winter ball? And just also, do you think it's viable for him to keep being a switch hitter? I know you talked about him getting more reps.
Yeah, I mean, a small sample down there, but I think just going down there and playing in that environment and getting some at bats, continuing to play, especially since the last month of the season, even though he played a lot throughout the year and ended up with over 400 big league at bats, still down the stretch he didn't play as much, obviously, and into the playoffs. So I think it's good to go do that. As far as the switch hitting, yes. Again, I go back and I hammered you guys over the head with this all year. We're talking about a very, very young player that, didn't play a ton of minor league baseball, and what suffers from that? The side you don't hit from as much. I still think it's a natural side for him. He's a natural right-handed hitter. So I don't think it's out of the question that at some point that right-handed, catches up to the left side. We'll see. But I think he has the ability to do it.
Did you get to spend much time with Spencer? Does that sound like you?
Yeah. No, not a lot. I was there. We crossed paths a couple of days there when he was there. So, he seems to be in a really good frame of mind, headspace, understanding. He put himself in a pretty strong position after having a strong year and, going to spring training for the first time where he's getting a real look. Last year was, he was in spring training, and I think that was eye-opening for him, and getting that opportunity to be around big league guys in our environment for a handful of weeks before going down. But he handled his business at the minor league level, and now he comes in with a, probably a more realistic look at, whether it's start the season or not, we'll see, but at a more realistic look to where he's now knocking on the door of the big leagues.
Your
Yeah, look, I don't. I mean, I'm looking forward to him being there and seeing a talented player continue to grow and mature in his career. But at the same time, you don't want to put too much stock in, how, the first few weeks of spring training are going, good, bad, indifferent. It's all part of the experience and growth, part of your career. And, but certainly we're excited about, where he is and the position he's put himself in.
What did you see from Jaason in the field last year?
Yeah. Overall, real improvement. But, there's still a long ways to go in that improvement. I think back to the end of 2024 where we saw him out there where there's some real struggles, obviously still getting used to left field, still now getting used to left field as it's still fairly new for him. Even in spring training, the difference of him in February compared to April, compared to June, I think there was really big strides. But there's still a ways to go, and just learning the nuances of the position. His athleticism is a real calling card for him as far as his speed and arm strength and things like that. And you hope that continues to win the day and eventually gets him to that point to where, man, now he's getting really good out there. But, he's still got a lot of development to still do in that regard.
What did you make of Trent's defense this past season? The metrics were not.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought definitely better than that. I think the defensive metrics, I think sometimes, like in my head, I think back to a couple balls in Sacramento where the wind was kind of weird and some balls get blown a certain way, and those kill an outfielder from whether it's defensive run save, whatever it may be. There was a month in the middle of the season or a later part where he was playing with the hamstring, so he probably didn't get to 3 or 4 balls that he normally gets to. That those things really ding you. I think overall, you still watch him play the position, you're like, oh, that's a real center fielder. And I think it's not unrealistic that he gets back to being more in line with that Gold Glove caliber guy, with better health, with just having a good off season from a training standpoint. I think that's very much still in there for him.
Rice had a big first full year for you, and
Yeah.
probably was a little bit unlucky with a lot of those hard hits. So what kind of ceiling does he have? Do you think he's still going to really take another big step?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, he's already, I think, by the time we got to the end and you looked at it, like this is a fearsome left-handed middle of the order hitter. This is who he is. And it's his first full season, so you hope there's always that continued improvement. I mean, he's the type of guy that gets after it. Obviously we saw what he did physically last offseason and how we feel like that really paid off for him. I saw him the other day at Yankee Stadium. I was in there. He was down hitting, and I had already seen like some of the weight, that you probably lose over the course of the season, and you get beat up by the end of the year. He looks really good, really physical right now. So, look, I think he's going to be one of the really good hitters in Major League Baseball for a while, and hopefully that means even another step next year.
What is your plan defensively with him?
Well, right now he's our first baseman. The catching stuff is still very much in play. And then we'll see. We'll see how, the offseason unfolds with where we are roster-wise going into spring training and how much catching that means, or is it all first base? But definitely see him as our first baseman.
He did a lot of extra catching stuff last year. Do you think he'd benefit from just focusing on first base?
As far as, defensively or...
Yeah.
I mean, he's working really, really hard every day at his craft. Like he's one of those guys that's always working. So I don't think he got shorted in his work at first base. Now, obviously, the first half of the year when Giancarlo was down and Goldie was playing pretty much every single day, it was mostly DH reps, but he's also working at first base and doing, when he was DHing, he was able to still work a little bit on his catching craft and his first base. We'll see as we go into spring training, what makes the most sense from, getting the most out of him. But, I think it's important and an important skill that he possesses that you don't necessarily want to just go away, because he is capable back there. And, even if that turns into being the two catcher or having that flexibility of having a third catcher on the roster, there's some real value in that too. So as I sit here right now, I don't want him to lose that or ignore that altogether, but likely first base being a focal point.
At this point, do you expect to add a right-handed hitting catcher to go along with it?
Not necessarily. It's impossible to say where the winter takes you. You go into the winter meeting, sometimes, the landscape or trades or free agency, what's out there, what's available, what lines up. Sometimes you're hammering a strength, and trying to overwhelm. Sometimes you're trying to plug holes, and that lines up. You just don't know what the landscape and where it's going to take you. So, not necessarily. Right, in a perfect world, you'd have a left and a right, but it's not something that we feel like we have to do, because we feel like obviously in Wells and JC, we have two really good. I feel like the world doesn't know yet so much about JC, but I'm really high on him on both sides of the ball. And then obviously having Ben, we'll see. We'll see how everything unfolds over the next couple months.
Sonny Gray caused quite a stir with what he said last week. You had him in 18. Were you surprised to hear him say it and so forcefully?
I mean, a little bit. Anytime a player comes out and says that, but that's all right. I mean, he's in Boston now. He's not supposed to like us anyway. So, that being said, I've always really liked Sonny, got along well with him. So, if you spice up the rivalry a little, there's nothing wrong with that. But I was a little surprised at how deep he went.
Could you tell he hated it here when he was here?
I don't know about hated. I don't know if I would have characterized it like that. I know it wasn't certainly the best stop for him, but one of those probably important steps along what's been a really good career for him.
Aaron, can you put a finger on why McMahon strikes out so often? Is it fixable in your mind?
I do. I think there's a lot more in there offensively than we saw from Mac. And feel like, he and our hitting guys have really had some good conversations as he's starting into his hitting program now this winter. I feel like there's a real two-way player in there. And hopefully we can help him, make little adjustments here that unlock all that, because he's a tremendous athlete, real power. Feel like knows the strike zone pretty well. There's some things he does in his swings that get him in trouble a little bit, but it would not surprise me at all to see him, go to a different level offensively, and hopefully he does that to really line up with obviously what he is as a defender. Yeah, good. He's been at Yankee Stadium pretty much every day up until last week when he went down to Tampa now to so he'll be there the rest of the way. So rehab's going well. He's making the right kind of progress, but still in that kind of rehab phase of it all.
How's the guy Cole?
Garrett's doing well. He's in. I think he ended up throwing about 6 to 8 bullpens before kind of the shutdown where he deloads a little bit, and then I think he's starting up his throwing program about now again to ramp back up. So it's gone well. He's doing well, and looking forward to him being back. Obviously.
Is he going to be ready for the start of the season, or is he going to be?
No, I don't expect him for the start of the season, but we'll see when that is. Whether it's a month or two in. It's obviously not something we'll rush. We want to make sure he's in a good spot, and when he enters the rotation, ready to roll. But I don't anticipate it being at the start. No.
How's John Carlo coming in? Are you optimistic that maybe you can get a full season out of him? I know it seems like it's something every year, but he's played the last few years. He's been pretty good.
Yeah, I hope so. I think he went into the winter in a pretty good spot. A little beat up like everyone, but not rehabbing something, so to speak, which is good. Obviously he's been through a lot physically with his body and the different things that he's had to deal with. I think that experience has served him well as far as just knowing what to do and how to do it. And, hopefully that means him being out there, for the bulk of the season, and not having stints where he's down. But we'll see.
Aaron, when you look at your current roster, what's missing or what needs fortifying to your view?
Again, you're always looking to get better, and that looks different every year. And we went and got Juan Soto a couple years ago to kind of really hammer a strength, and last year we were able to go plug more holes. So it just depends what we could always use more fortification and better players in certain areas, but I don't know where the winter takes us. So, I know Cash talked about us being left-handed, and that's one thing, we're, are focused on a little bit is, trying to get some balance, whether that's from a, creating an everyday player or where your bench becomes more of, like when we brought in Slater and we brought in Rosario last year to kind of give us some balance and some options, within a game. We'll see how that goes. But, we're also counting on, a lot of our young, Warren taking another step, Schlittler taking another step, the Rices and Wells and these guys, and JD, kind of going to another level in their development as big league players.
Have you decided if Preston or Desi will be in the bullpen?
Preston will be in the bullpen.
What did you think of Wells offensively last year?
Yeah, thought got off to a really good start and then kind of hit a lull there in the middle of the season, and I think there was a month in there where he really struggled. To the point where, he was losing a little bit of playing time. That's when Ben started catching a little bit more. And but I also thought he kind of righted the ship a little bit. At the end of the season, was given some of his better at-bats of the season down the stretch. So, and again, like with Austin, and I've said this to you guys a lot, like I think he's really good offensively. I think he can be a really good major league hitter. Again, you get a catcher that hits 20 homers and, I think was over 700 probably with his OPS, but I think as a credit to him, like I expect more out of him, for what he brings though behind the plate, and I think how good he's become defensively. You'd kind of sign up for that level of production from your catcher, but because of what I believe he can be offensively, I'm hoping and expecting more in there.
Aaron, as confident as you were to make it with the team at the end of last year, can it be as simple for you guys as to bring back Bellinger and to expect Cole to be Garrett Cole again, as far as big changes in the team?
Yeah. I mean, look, honestly, this end of our season this year was, frankly, as hard a one for me as because of, like you said, I felt like we were really good and healthy and peaking at the right time, and got beat in a series against a team that we obviously struggled with last year with the Blue Jays. So it was hard. so you want to take stock in that, and again, you're always trying to improve your club and improve your team, but also pause and say, hey, we're pretty good here, and we got a lot of really good players and a lot of really good young core players that emerged on different levels last year that we need to continue to grow in their big league, kind of journey.
You guys mentioned coaches. How mentioned the base running a couple weeks. How
Yeah.
mentioned the base running not being good enough a couple weeks ago. Bringing Fiorito to kind of help that. What do you hope he kind of does there to improve you guys in that area?
Yeah, so Theo and Ryan Hunt, in kind of an advisory role, if you will. We think that combination, where kind of overseeing obviously the infield and the base running. And I just want our base running to continue to go to another level. I felt like last year we made some real strides in the base running department, especially second half of the year. Finally, I feel like our athleticism started to, pay dividends for us and show up in games and, even help us win games with our speed and athleticism and stuff. And we just want that. We need to continue to get better at that, though. It's an area that, it's obviously been talked about a lot over the last couple of years, but we need to continue to move the needle and get better and try and make those gains on the margins, and base running is one of the areas we can do that. Theo has been in our organization now for a long time. We interviewed a number of really good candidates, a lot internal that we're really excited about, like, guys with, I think, really bright futures, whether it's continuing in player development, whether it's in, becoming major league coaches. Theo's earned that opportunity, earned that right, and he's ready for this. And I feel like, knows our players well, has experience with a lot of our players, and has done really good work in player development and earned this opportunity. So I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Ryan Hunt and what he's going to bring and kind of overseeing it all. So feel like, and then just hopefully we continue to, move the needle where on the bases where, we're taking advantage rightly of our athleticism and striking that right balance between risk reward, where you push the envelope.
Aaron, you mentioned struggling
You
with
added a couple coaches to the staff that had experience with some of your younger players when they were in the minor leagues, first as an active as well.
Yeah.
Do you feel that was important to have guys that were with some of the younger hitters when they were having success in the minor leagues?
That's one piece of it, but probably, frankly, a smaller one. We're trying to get the best and brightest, so whether that's guys that have worked with some of our players or not, we're trying to get the most impactful people in obviously important, prominent positions. So we feel like Jake has, noticeably done an excellent job in player development over the last several years. He has been in and around us in spring training on the big league side and helping out, and he like Theo, he's kind of earned the opportunity, and excited for him to step in and become an important part of our hitting group, which obviously with J-Ro and Casey back, losing six, I feel like that hitting group has done a really good job for us over the last couple of years in creating the right kind of, culture in our hitting room.
You said losing six, so are you guys no longer exploring other roles for Russell?
We'll see. We'll see what potentially comes up or not. Again, as the offseason continues to fold. Nothing right now, but we'll see.
Aaron, you mentioned struggling against the Blue Jays all year.
Yeah.
How do you close that gap against them?
Well, playing better against them is the real simple answer. At the end of the day, we ended up knotted with them, but in the head-to-head, they kicked our butt, and especially in those summer months. in that stretch where we were scuffling a little bit. They beat us up, including a 4-game sweep up there, and that obviously ended up really hurting us. You know, we got them 2 out of 3 at home late in the year, and then when we were in a better place, and obviously, you know, they were on fire against us in the playoffs. So, look, it comes down to, you know, against other good teams, execution, performance, game plan, all that. You know, because the margin's thin against other great teams.
Getting beat up by them like that, do you think that can compound in the psyche over the course of the year?
No. I mean, as far as this year, like, I mean, you know, we played them in September and beat them 2 out of 3 in meaningful time of the year where we're closing in on and trying to, you know, win the division. But to their credit, they beat our butts in the postseason. So, you know, that's sports sometimes. Obviously, them being in our division is, and obviously feel like they're going to be really good again going into next year, as is the rest of the division. I feel like, you know, you got to play well, especially in our division, if you're going to have a chance to win the division and do something great.
Do you think that gap is smaller than a lot of people think?
Yeah.
What tells you that?
Well, I mean, we ended with the identical records last year. I mean, I don't want to discount that they kicked our ass last year. Like, I don't take it out of context. Like, so I mean, I would say the gap is probably. I mean, we have the exact same record, and but you know, they obviously were a great team last year, and you know, an eyelash away from winning a world championship. So, you know, they certainly proved to be the better team this year, and hopefully, you know, we can close that gap and pass them and others this year.